Safety is of utmost importance in cases of emergencies, like health crisis. But this should not impede learning. Students should be allowed to continue learning in the safety of their homes. Vibal brings you the Smart Homeschool Kit. The Smart Homeschool Kit offers complete tools for a homeschool setup while encouraging collaboration between teachers and parents. This kit contains the following. First, Smart Wizard. These workbooks provide age-appropriate supplementary activity sheets to challenge learners' understanding of the lessons and help them put their learnings into practice. A teacher's guide that serves as a manual for monitoring the learning progress of students at home is also available in the kit. This kit also contains a parent's guide to assist parents in guiding their children while learning at home. Daily lessons are made available in Smart Class. Aside from lessons, these books feature performance tasks aligned with DepEd's K-12 curriculum, good for an entire school year. And to monitor students' learning progression at home, Smart Homeschool Kit also features vSmart HMS, an online monitoring system designed for homeschool learning with features including assignment of lessons and tasks to students and tracking of learners' progress through analytics. Get the Smart Homeschool Kit today. Email marketing@vibalgroup.com for more details.
Good afternoon, Kavibal, and welcome to another session of the Supplemental Materials webinar series. For today's discussion, our topic would be on designing supplementary reading materials based on constructivist approach. Before we begin, take note of the following reminders. Make sure you are registered to the webinar to have your e-certificate of participation. Visit certificate.vibalgroup.com to generate your proof of attendance. Place your questions on the comment box allotted during the session, and they will be addressed by our speaker later on. Share the video using hashtag LearnAs1PH as our official hashtag to our Vibal webinars. Experience learning ka-Vibal. And now, to proceed with our webinar this afternoon, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our distinguished speaker. He advocates social transformation through reading, language, and literature education. Our speaker is an English teacher at the Eugenio Lopez Jr. Center for Media Arts Senior High School in the Schools Division of Quezon City. Previously, he is affiliated with other educational institutions such as San Francisco High School and St. Mary's College of Quezon City. He is currently pursuing his Master of Arts in Education, major in Reading Education at the Ateneo de Manila University. He obtained his baccalaureate degree, Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Literature from the Philippine Normal University Manila, Class 2011. He rendered services for the Department of Education as a chief trainer in the National Training on Literacy Instruction in 2019, which is in accordance with the DepEd initiative, Bawat Bata Bumabasa. He also served as a lesson exemplar writer, technical specifications writer, and language reviewer, and demonstration teacher in the different regional and national programs organized by the Department of Education. He is a well-known textbook writer and a model teacher awardee. Our speaker is a webinar resource speaker in different divisions through which he has shared about reading and assessment. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our speaker for this afternoon, Mr. Kevin Neil Dailo.
Hello, everyone. A grace-filled afternoon to all of you. As Miss Kiana says, mga kavibal. Thank you so much, Miss Kiana, for the introduction. Okay, so let me share my screen first. So once again, good afternoon to everyone. Thank God it's Friday. It's Friday afternoon, and I know at this point we are already anticipating the weekend, isn't it? But then here you are choosing to learn more about how do we go about the new normal education. So thank you for that, mga kavibal. Thank you for that, fellow educators. And now we begin with our disposition. Let me suggest um, our disposition whenever we join or whenever we participate in different webinars. Well, let us subscribe to this hashtag of Vibal nonetheless. Hashtag learn as one Philippines. How do we do this? Well, whatever good thing, whatever right thing you learn from the webinars, make sure you share them to other people as well so that indeed we will be learning as one Philippines. Also, let us have this uh, process based approach wherein we collect ample information as great as many as we can, but then we only select what is applicable to our context, and then eventually we apply it and then reflect whether or not it's really efficient, it's really relevant to our context. Now, you notice that this is already the last leg of the webinar series on supplemental materials, and it's particularly titled as Designing Supplementary Reading Materials Based on Constructivist Approach. There are two constructs here, there are two main concepts here. One is supplementary reading materials. Probably you may be thinking, oh, this is just about reading materials, it's just for reading classes or for language and literature classes. No, when we speak of reading materials, we talk about all the reading materials that we use in different learning areas. So this cuts across the curriculum content areas. Okay, so that's the first one. And the next is constructivist approach. This one, as we all know, is not groundbreaking. Rather, this is tried and tested. But let me tell you that once again for this afternoon, we'll see the enduring principles of constructivism. Okay, and how it remains relevant even in the new normal setting. So these are the two main concepts for today's session, for this afternoon's session. When we speak of learning materials, probably the first thing that comes to mind is book. And in reference to basal reading approach, we think of textbooks, isn't it? But then now in the new normal, we are preparing other things aside from textbooks. We have the alternative delivery mode, which is what we use now for the creation of the different modules for the distance modular learning approach. And then we prepare lesson exemplars and we resort to open educational resources. So there are a lot of other things that we prepare aside from the readily available textbooks during the time when we are not yet in this new normal. Okay. But then after all of these main references, we can add other reading references. Here is where supplemental or supplementary reading materials sets in. Okay. So that is the context of where do we find the position of supplementary reading materials. And to continue discussing about the characteristics of supplementary reading materials, let us have this, the Menti. Let's go to Menti. So please, some of you, probably not all of you will be accommodated. Please proceed to menti.com and then key in the code 975005. Again, may I invite some of you to go to menti.com and then key in the code 975005. And then in a little while, I'll be sharing the Menti presentation. Okay, did you get that? 975005. All right, let's go to the Menti. Okay, the first question is, or the first statement is, my learners have diverse needs and conditions. And then you either agree, oh yes, or oh no, that's not applicable to me. Okay, we have 100 responses and more. Okay, let's go to the next question. Abilis ng responses. I recognize that sometimes I need to use other materials aside from the textbook and or other readily available materials. Okay, faster responses. There are more than 200 responses now. Thank you so much. Thank you for participating very actively. By the way, just a incidental teaching, menti.com, the Kahoot, the quizzes, Slido, Peer Deck, these are what we call the CRS or classroom response systems. They're also known as students response systems, or before they are casually called as clickers. Okay, so they've been existing for quite some time, but it's only now that we realize how relevant are they and how usable are these things for our instruction. Okay, fun and efficient, isn't it? Okay, going back to the ideas. Those two statements, it is very clear. No one answered, oh no. Everyone answered, oh yes. Oh yes, for you, all of our learners have diverse needs and they are in diverse conditions. And then for the second statement, we feel sometimes that we are limited when we just use the textbooks or other readily available materials. Okay, and so we want to use other learning materials. Okay, with that, all of you said yes, also, no one said oh no. So, really, we realize the necessity for supplementary reading materials. Okay, they are additional learning materials. They are very relevant to address the diverse needs and to cater the different conditions of our learners. And also in addressing the diverse needs of our learners and in considering the different additional materials that we can use, we can and we should really consider adapting the locally available materials. Okay. One rule of thumb about supplementary materials, about additional learning material is this. What do you notice with the picture? These are easy to consume, easy to eat because they are bite-sized. Okay. And this is a fundamental concept of supplemental or supplementary reading materials. They should be uh, of bite-sized learning. Okay. They should facilitate bite-sized learning. Because after all, they are just supplementary materials. They should not be greater. They should not be heavier than our main materials. Okay. Also, this one is applicable for the ADM or the modular writing that we are having now. That's why there are limitations in the pages, right? I think it's only 16 to 17 pages for the modules that many of the teachers, particularly the public school teachers, are writing. Okay. And that is the same in supplementary reading materials. You will promote bite sized learning. Do not overwhelm your learners. I know you want to share a lot to your learners. I know you may be feeling highly concerned because at this point, it's as if it's only the materials which serve as our substitute. We cannot be physically there if we are talking about modular learning. Okay, and even if it's online distance learning, we still feel limited. But then do not subscribe to that temptation of overwhelming the learners. Go to the for the bite-sized learning, particularly for supplementary reading materials. Constructivism. Again, this is tried and tested. We go back to the basics. You notice in the previous sessions of this webinar series, they're already talking about different educational technologies that we can incorporate in creating supplementary materials. But this time we go back to the basic. And this is constructivism. I know this is just a review for us since our pre-service education and since our graduate studies, we've been tackling about constructivism and we've been using this unconsciously or subconsciously. Okay. This posits that learners are not passive receptors of knowledge. Rather, they are active constructors of learners. Okay, and how will that be possible? That will be possible if we give them meaningful learning opportunities, meaningful learning experiences. Okay, we facilitate that for them. Also, they will be active constructors of knowledge if and only if we let them go to their zone of proximal development or the ZPD. Okay, and when we say ZPD, the easiest explanation of this is their learning level wherein they are experiencing difficulty in terms of grasping some competencies, some knowledge, some skills, but then they will still be able to get it. They will be able to push through with the scaffolding of the MKO or the more knowledgeable other. Okay. Scaffolding, this is guidance. This is the guidance of the teacher. This is the all the assistance that the teacher can give, all the prompting, all the questions that will lead the learner to go on with his learning process despite the difficulties, despite the challenges in the learning instruction and in the learning experiences. Okay. Now, what is MKO? MKO stands for, you may key in your answers in the chat box. This is just a review for all of us. MKO. What is MKO? This is more knowledgeable other. And of course, it's easy to say that when we talk about MKO, we pertain to the teachers. That probably is the first thing that comes to mind. Oh, MKO in education, that should be you, teachers. But then now more than ever, MKOs are the parents, the guardians, or anyone surrounding the learner, surrounding the child who is more intellectually mature or more skillfully mature, who can offer guidance or scaffolding to the child. And then the ultimate goal in constructivism, as they actively construct their knowledge, eventually they will be independent learners. Okay, this also resonates with the gradual release of responsibility in explicit teaching. Okay, now why constructivism? Well, it is a theoretical base. It is a theoretical framework of depth ed K to 12 curriculum basic education, nonetheless. So it's really prescribed for us. These are other wonderful concepts of constructivism. Aside from believing that learners are active constructors of knowledge, we also allow them to have reflection, self reflection. We also allow them to have social interaction, a social interaction that is so productive that they get to collaborate. They get to finish tasks, they get to learn from one another as well. And we also have inquiry based. Okay, all of these things are wonderful concepts of constructivism, but what is the problem, especially now in the new normal? So what is the problem? The problem is these are all easy to exemplify, these are all easy to concretize when we are in the face-to-face classroom interaction, right? In the face-to-face classroom instruction. But now we are really challenged because we are in the time of the new normal. Distance learning, whether it's modular, whether it's online, or whatever your LCP is or learning continuity plan is for your school, um, this should now translate to the supplementary materials and for to the other learning materials that we will be creating. And that is what we are discussing now, how to translate these wonderful concepts of constructivism in preparing and designing and eventually in using learning materials, specifically of supplementary reading materials. Okay, so that even though we are in distance learning or blended learning or even flipped learning, constructivism is still apparent. Okay, now my disclaimer: if you're expecting for the format, oh no, that is what I won't give to you today. Rather, I'll be giving you the enduring principles of constructivism relative to the creation and the designing of supplementary reading materials. Okay, why not the format? We all know that format varies from one school to another, from one division to another. Okay, there are always variations. So we will not prescribe one format. Rather, I will be reminding you about the guiding principles so that whatever your LCP is, whatever your modality is, you can apply constructivism in creating your supplementary reading materials. Okay, so we focus on principles. And these are the 7 principles that we will be talking about or today. Okay, by the way, aside from Vygotsky and Piaget, we also have many other constructivists, and we also subscribe to their ideas. Okay, so these are the 7 practical principles for developing supplementary materials. First is knowing how to teach the what. Next is knowing who our learners are, providing learners with pre-teaching vocabulary, accommodating accommodating various forms of questioning as instructional modification, manufacturing success, accommodating learners' individual factors, and providing appropriate feedback for learners' learning. We start off with knowing how to teach the what. And of course, we start actually with knowing what to teach. How do we know what to teach? Well, we always focus on learning goals. And then knowing how to teach the what, we need to take into account the learner's reading level and the learner's readability and the readability level of the text. Okay, so the learner's reading level should be parallel with the readability level of the text or simply with the level of the text. Okay. Learning goals. How do we get the learning goals? Where do we get the learning goals? We follow the hierarchy of goals. So we have long-term goals, short-term goals, from which we base our instructional objectives. What are these actually in the classroom setting? Long-term goals are our content and performance standards. Short-term goals are the different learning competencies. And in our lesson plans, in our lesson logs, we write our own objectives. Okay, these are the specifics of it. Okay, and now in the new normal, we talk about milk, also most essential learning competencies. Okay, so we always start with that. That is rule of thumb, isn't it? Knowing what to teach, go back always to the curriculum. That is our Bible as instructors, as teachers. In creating supplementary reading materials, probably because it's supplementary, we can go beyond. We can go beyond the set learning competencies. But let us make sure that we will not veer away so much from the learning competencies. Okay. So for example, we are teaching about different text types. And then in the curriculum, you are only required to teach 3 text types in your class. So it's okay, it's fine if you add other things in your supplementary reading materials. You'd like to talk about other text types, but then make sure that you always go back to what is indicated in the curriculum. Okay. Another, now that we know what to teach based on the curriculum, based on the set standards and the set goals, we now consider the learner's reading level and the readability level of the text. What do we mean with this? Number one, learner's reading level. How do you know learner's reading level? Should you have the feel eerie? You may be telling us that we are not reading teachers, but actually we can all be, and we should all be reading teachers. Okay, and yeah, should we resort to more technical uh, means of knowing the reading level of the child, such as feel eerie and other ways of knowing their reading level? No, this is the assumption that the grade level of the child is the reading level of the child. So that is supposed to be the case. That is the ideal case. Meaning, when your child is in grade 2, he or she should be reading grade 2 texts in all subjects. Okay? That is the ideal situation. Okay? And then what do you do with the text? You match it with texts which is at par with the or within the reading level of the child. Simply said, you just give the child grade 2 texts as well. Okay? If you give the child kinder texts, that may bore the child amply. But if you give the child a grade 6 text, your child will always be a frustrated reader. Okay? In all subjects. So you just match the reading level of the child with the text that you are giving. Okay, as simple as that. Now, how do we identify now the readability level of the text? Well, this is the assumption that if you get it from different textbooks, graded textbooks, then if you get it, for example, on from a science article, let's say for your science class, you get it from a grade 7 science textbook, then your assumption is that is a grade 7 text. Okay, that is readable for grade 7 learners. If it's from a grade 6 MAPE book, then that text is for grade 6 learners, right? As simple as that. However, there are times that we go beyond the textbooks. Okay, after all, we should get realia, we should get real articles from different materials, not just from textbooks. Okay, so one system that I can suggest to you is the use of the Lexile Analyzer. I know some of you are using this already. So the Lexile Analyzer goes like this. You get a text as much as 250 words. That is the limitation. You get a text, copy that text or type that text, and then proceed to that website, hub.lexile.com analyzer. Okay, and then that text analyzer, that Lexile analyzer will be giving you the Lexile text range. Okay, you refer to that, and then you'll be able to find out the readability level of the text. Is it for grade 1, or probably is it for grade 9 to 10? Is it for grades 11 to 12? Okay, for example, you analyzed a text, place a text there within the limit number of words, number yeah. So, for example, you got there 800 Lexile level. So, it's for grades 4 to 5. Okay, so that is the readability level you give that to these learners. Okay, now you may be telling that is very limiting. You're only allowed to analyze 250 words. Remember the rule of thumb in supplementary reading materials? It should be bite-sized learning. So this would be fine. 250 words is even more than enough for that reading material, for that supplementary reading material. Okay, now I've discussed a while ago briefly the ideal scenario, but of course, we know that some readers are not reading on their expected reading level, and so we should identify that. For example, we have grade 7 learners. I had grade 7 learners before, and then their reading level, their actual reading level, is in grade 4 or even lower, grade 2. So what do we do with that? While the English teachers or the reading teachers give them remedial reading program, while they receive different intervention programs to level up their reading capacity, the other teachers who are giving supplementary materials should take into account what is the actual reading level of the child. If that child, although he is in grade 7 but he reads in grade 4, then the teachers should be giving texts actually which are in grade 4. Okay, so that they won't be frustrated readers, and they will be encouraged, and they will eventually be going up the ladder. Okay. Also, to ensure the readability level of the text, we can and we should localize and contextualize. Because sometimes there are instances that we think that the child is weak in comprehension, that the child is weak in the competencies, but after all, it's just a matter of them not having the ideas within their context. So the moment that we give it and connect it to their context, they can actually understand, they can actually cope with their difficulties. Okay, so these are the things that we should be minding in choosing texts. Okay, see, you're just choosing texts for your supplementary reading material. There are already a lot of things that you can you should consider. Okay, next, knowing who our learners are. Well, actually, in the first principle, it's already encompassing this one. Okay, we know who our learners are, their reading level, the text that is appropriate for them. But to further observe or um, to further talk about who our learners are, we focus on their proficiency and achievement level. Of course, we can get this easily through their grades, through the use of standardized tests, and then we can classify who are the high achievers and the low achievers. Okay. Now, once we classify the low achievers and the high achievers, we must give them the tailored instruction. And this one is an imagery of that, an analogy of that, isn't it? So if it is just an RTW clothing, look at that how it appears, and look at a tailored suit. See how wonderfully it falls on the body. That is the same with instruction. Although it is always easier said than done, as much as possible, we give tailored instruction to our learners. Okay, and that is applicable in doing supplementary materials. So, one thing that sets the high achievers from the low achievers is this: their study skills. They differ in processing information, they differ in retaining and recalling information. You also see the gap or their difference in terms of how they organize materials and how they manage their time. Also, you see the difference between how they select, monitor, and use effective learning and study strategies. In fact, some of the low achievers don't even have study strategies established at all. Unfortunately, it's like that. Okay, one concrete example is this. In terms of retaining and recalling information, you notice, you observe this very well. For the high achievers, what do? They can employ different strategies to remember information. They have their mnemonic devices, isn't it? While on the other hand, the low achievers really have difficulty remembering information, and they do not even know how to cope with that difficulty. Okay, so with that, what is the implication of this in designing our supplementary reading materials? We need to provide them with these things, especially for the low achievers. So, for the low achievers, to let them cope with their processing information, make sure that your reading materials should have graphic organizers, different comprehension strategies, so that they will know the order of the ideas, they will know the main idea and then the supporting details, they will know the cause and effect relationship of ideas, things like that. Okay. How about for the retaining and recalling information? In your reading material, you should deliberately teach them mnemonic strategies. Strategies. Should they use acronyms? Should they use other engaging mnemonic strategies? Okay. You may also teach them specific ways on how to do note taking. Well, one is kernel notes. I use that in my class. How about organizing materials and managing time? Probably you, in your reading materials, you let them create their calendars, you let them jot down their activities, or probably you set specific time on how long, how short should they finish this activity or this reading, things like that. And for the selecting, monitoring, and using strategies, you should be deliberately teaching them through the reading materials self-regulation strategies. Like what? Like, let's say, self-correcting strategies. So when they encounter miscues, when they have errors on what they read, on what they do, what should they do? What, give them suggestions there in your reading materials. And again, this is applicable not only for English classes, for language or classes, for Filipino classes, but for all disciplines. Okay, this is universally applicable. Okay, next, providing students with pre-teaching vocabulary. So just when you thought that this is only applicable for language classes, it's applicable to all classes. Okay. But here, we should be using the inquiry based approach. Okay. So instead of you assuming and presuming the words that you think are difficult for them, you ask them. It's the other way around. They should be the ones, probably they read the text, first read, second read, to just get the words which are unfamiliar to them. Okay. That's the first thing that you should do. And then they should write it down and then look for the meaning of the words, or possibly more meaningfully, after they identified those words that are unfamiliar to them, you let them, or you teach them context clues. Okay, so that they won't be resorting to dictionaries all the time. Also, another strategy is the request or the reciprocal questioning. Okay, how does this work? You model how you ask questions about the words and then they follow. For example, it's probably it's a social science class and then they encountered the word Marxism for the first time. Um, you give questions, you model questions. Is Marxism a person? Is Marxism a place? And then they should be asking the questions too. So you model the questions and then they imitate how you structure the questions until such time that probably they can go to this level. Is Marxism a movement? Is it a philosophy? Okay, so on and so forth. Okay, so it's you modeling how to ask questions about the words so that it will lead them to the exploration of the meaning of the words, and then them asking themselves or asking one another in terms of the meaning of the words. And of course, if this is just for supplementary reading materials, most likely they will be on their own, or they'll just have their parents as their MKO, their guardians as their MKO. Okay, so these are two suggested strategies for you to teach the pre-teaching, the vocabulary, for them to be ready with the input that you have in the supplementary reading materials. And we proceed to number 4, accommodating different forms of questioning as instructional modification. Okay. Now, there are questions that you ask differently because you are considering the different thinking processes, the different thinking levels. And then there are questions which require different answers as well. So we begin with the thinking process. Very familiar with this, right? So this is what we use now as our framework for instruction and assessment as prescribed by the Department of Education. We use Anderson and Krathwohl's process dimensions, or this is also closely related to the modified Bloom's taxonomy. So you have the 6. Apparently, remembering, understanding, and applying are lower or are low order thinking skills, and then you have analyzing, evaluating, and creating as your HOTS. Okay, so make sure that the questions that you're asking in your supplementary materials are of different levels. Not only HOTS, you need to ask low order questions as well. Not only all about understanding, ask them questions which will test their evaluating thinking process, so on and so forth. Okay, so now we realize that the supplementary reading material has these elements. For the supplementary reading material, you have the text, the relevant text, the text that you need, and then you have questions, and then you have different activities. Okay, the same with the elements of any other learning materials. Now, one strategy that I can share to you is the QAR, the question answer relationship strategy. Remember this, the right there, think and search, author and me, and on my own. Okay, so here they will not only be able to answer the questions, they will even know how to answer the questions, how to get the answers to the questions, how to contemplate about the questions. So this is also metacognitive. Okay, so we start with right there. That's why it's called right there, because the answer is right there. It can be found in that specific sentence, in that specific line. The learner can point it out. The learner can point the answers. Okay, and these are the prompts. Of course, the WH questions. And then you have other prompts like how does the define the or the name. These are prompts. These are typical prompts for right there questions. Okay, next, we also have think and search. Here, from the name itself, the answers are there in the text, but then they need to read the entire text. They need to read different parts of the text so that they can combine them together. They should read between the lines. They should get what is the implied message. Okay, for them to be able to answer the questions. And these are the prompts for think and search. The main idea of the passage, or what is the main idea of the passage? What is the effect of? What causes this and that? So these are the prompts. Okay, how would you compare? How would you contrast? Isn't it? We cannot answer these questions very easily. And usually they really require our learners to read between the lines. Okay, but they are there. The learners can still point out which lines, which sentences actually imply the answers to these questions. Okay. Next, the third one, author and me. Now, this one accommodates higher order thinking skills. The first two may be more on the low order thinking skills, but this one is for the HOTS already, starting from these questions. Still, the the learner needs to read between the lines, needs to get implied messages in the text. However, here he needs to go beyond, or she needs to go beyond. Okay, uh, the learner needs to use his background knowledge this time, and then combine it with what the author is implying. So these are the prompts, the usual prompts. What does the author, or if you don't want to use the word author, what does the text imply? What does the author suggests? What does it suggest about freedom? What does it suggest about love? And of course, that won't be in the text. It's not possible that the learner can point that out. I mean, no author will be talking about the theme of the story. No author will be talking about the um the theme of the text, the thesis statement of the essay, etc. So it is there, but the writer, the reader or the learner cannot point it out exactly. So he needs to use now his knowledge, what he has, and connect it with what's implied there. Okay, that's author and me. Then lastly, we have on my own. Okay, here again, it's not easily found in the text, or probably it's not in the text at all, but the ideas expressed in the text can be used by the learner so that he or she can have his own perspective, so that he or she can have his or her own stand about the topic. Okay, so these are the prompts. In your opinion, what is, based on your experience, is this really true? Is this apparent? Think about someone or something you know and relate it to. Okay, these are your prompts. Now, again, just like the author in me on my own accommodates higher order or high order thinking skills, or the HOTS. Answers required. There are two answers: convergent answers or divergent answers. So, I know you know this very well. If you are asking about, or if you are testing the low order thinking skills of the child, what answers are you expecting? Is it convergent? Are these convergent answers or divergent answers? You may key in using the chat box. By the way, another incidental teaching. Of course, in synchronous learning, we always maximize the use of the chat box. Okay? This is not just to kill the time. It's really a principle of synchronous learning. Okay, this one is convergent. Okay? If mostly for the recall, okay, for the understanding, this will call for convergent answers. Okay, and these are specific answers, objective answers. You have here the one correct answer, the best answer. Okay, on the other hand, you have divergent. Okay, wherein they are able to have extended thinking. Okay, so there are many possible appropriate answers to one question. There are many possible brilliant ideas connected to the main idea that you prompted. Okay, so this is the difference of the two. So again, the HOTS will be more for the divergent, and then the low order for the convergent. Okay, now connecting it with the four types of questions in the QAR, what do you think are divergent questions? Again, you may key in using the chat box. What are divergent questions among the four that we've mentioned a while ago? Or which questions will require divergent answers, rather? Again, which questions will require divergent answers? Okay, right. This would be the answers to your on my own and author and me. Okay, but then for the first two, the right there and think and search, you should be expecting more convergent answers. So that's the relationship. Okay, manufacturing success. This is very easy. Hammer here just reiterates the first points that we've discussed. So, in order for us to make sure that the learners are engaged, even they're just using our supplementary reading materials, we need to make sure that we choose the right text. Okay, and as you've seen, as we've talked about a while ago, as I've shared to you a while ago, there are a lot of considerations that you should make in choosing the text for your supplementary reading material. The right tasks. Okay, some tasks may be really helpful for low achievers, right? So probably you can give them more tailored tasks. Okay, clear and achievable purpose of learning. Again, to be able to know this, go back to the curriculum, go back to the milk, and uh, appropriately refer and benchmark your goals, your learning goals. Okay, another. Second to the last, we have accommodating learners' individual factors. Of course, constructivist is learner centered, student centered. So we always mind their motivation, their interest, and their engagement. And we know the intertwined relationships of these three. Okay. Um, One thing that you can do, especially if this is for your language classes or for reading classes, is to conduct reading interest inventory so that you'll know their topic of interest. Okay, but for other disciplines, of course, then this may not be so relevant for other disciplines because, of course, there are really topics that are required in your milk in your standards. Okay, so these things that I'm posting here are more relevant for language classes. Probably it's a matter of distinctions in the genres. Okay, so if you know that your learners are really fond of reading, let's say drama or fiction, probably it's high time that you expose them to other genres like nonfiction or poetry. Okay, for the other disciplines, what we can do is this. Uh, you have your subject matter, which is rooted, which is of course grounded in your milk in your curriculum. Then probably you can think of other things within their interest, within their fascination that you can relate to that subject matter, and that is what you can use for your supplementary reading materials. So see, it's really uh, having it's really considering the reading interests of the children, of the learners. Lastly, providing appropriate feedback for learners learning. Okay, whether they like it or not, actually we teachers should be giving them feedback, especially now in the time of new normal. Okay, there may be several times, especially for modular learning and for asynchronous learning, there are several times that they feel that they're not doing it right. And so every now and then, whenever we get the modules, whenever we have a session with them, we give them feedback as much as we can. And this is, of course, assessment for learning, thus formative assessment. And we know that there should really be a lot of formative assessment all throughout instruction. Okay. Now, the good thing about feedback is it comes from different avenues. Well, it actually starts with self reflection, or what we call the self assessment of the learner. Okay, and this is very much possible for the new normal setting. Okay, we should really maximize the use of self reflection. We give them prompts, we give them questions, we give them sentence completion, we give them charts to be able to reflect very well on their own performance, on their own pacing. Okay, and this one may be challenging for modular learning, the peer feedback, because I think that will be very complicated if you let the learners exchange modules. So this one is only possible. I'm talking about peer feedback. This is only applicable if they are doing online distance learning. Okay, by all means, they can exchange works and give feedback. And of course, the ultimate source of feedback, okay, it's the teacher, or as I was saying, the MKOs, not only the teachers, but all the possible MKOs in the environment of the learner. Okay, so these are the three main sources of the feedback. As I said a while ago, there are different feedback prompts that we can give. This is a no-no, that you just tell your child, okay, assess yourself, reflect on what you did, or exchange works and then give feedback. Where are the instructions? Where is the structure? You need to give it to them so that they can meaningfully and successfully feedback. And one feedback prompt that we can use is the SWOT model, which stands for strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats. So these are the questions. For example, for strengths, okay, what should be done the same way next time? Or for the threats, what went unexpectedly badly and why? Of course, you can tweak these questions. Okay, you can make it appropriate for peer feedback, or for your feedback as a teacher, or for self-assessment. Okay, the most important thing that I'm reiterating here is there should be structure, there should be prompt always. Okay, another feedback prompt, so that your learners won't be discouraged with your feedback. Make sure you use the tried and tested feedback sandwich model. Okay, so you have positive feedback first, and then followed with the points for improvement, which springs from the negative feedback, and then you close your feedback with other positive feedback. Okay, so that, again, as I said, the learners will be encouraged. Okay, now those are the seven. Those are the seven practical principles in constructivist principles that you can apply in right, in creating your reading materials. But then let's make it more concrete. Let's exemplify it now. So let's say I am an English teacher. Well, I'm really an English teacher, and then I am teaching English 5. Okay. And then I got my lesson now, according to the milk, is this: summarize various text types based on elements. So that is my milk. And then I have this sub competency according to the curriculum: distinguish text types according to features. And those text types are the following: you have problem and solution, you have cause and effect, you have comparison and contrast, and time order. Okay, but then remember, what I am doing is supplementary reading material. So this comes after the main discussion. Okay, now I notice that my learners are actually having problems with analyzing and summarizing cause and effect text. So what will I do? I will only focus on cause and effect in the module that I am, not in the module, in the supplementary reading material that I am creating. Okay, so I'm going to find a text which expresses cause and effect. And let's say I found one. I found one from the net. Okay, so you have that text. What should be the next thing that I should do? Should I include this in the supplementary reading material and let it be consumed by my learners? Am I ready? Not yet. I'm not yet ready because I still need to know the readability level of this text. Can my learners, can the learners really read this, digest this according to their reading level? So what I did, I actually did this. I analyzed this using the Lexile analyzer, and guess what? According to the Lexile analyzer, the range is from 810 to 1000. And thankfully, that matches my the level of my students. It's good for grades 3 to 5. So I am really choosing this text now. But let's say that the Lexile level or the Lexile range is not appropriate. What can be done? What should we do? We can change the text uh, entirely, or probably we can simplify some of the words. Okay, we can tweak some of the sentences to make it easier for the lower level learners. Okay, things like that. Okay, so it's perfect for my grade 5 learners, and now they read the text. Okay, bayanihan is a core essence of the Filipino culture. It is helping out one's neighbor as a community and doing a task together, thus lessening the workload and making the job easier. It is also called the community spirit. It is best exhibited when people wish to move locations in the rural area. The traditional Filipino house, the bahay kubo, can be moved using wooden poles which are carried from the old property to the new property. The poles are placed on and cheering the men on. Afterwards, there will be a small gathering as a form of celebration and socialization. Okay, so remember, we should give them their vocabulary, the pre-teaching vocabulary. So before I give the questions and other forms or other points of discussions, I should let them decipher. I should let them identify. Read this several times for them to point out which words seem to be unfamiliar to them. Okay, and then we can let them, we can scaffold on that. Okay, now talking about context, also talking about the context and talking about the appropriateness of the text. Bahay kubo, let's underscore that. Our learners in NCR are urban learners and 21st century learners. Most likely, some of them may not be so familiar already with bahay kubo, right? So what can be done as scaffolding for this? Okay, many things can be done, like supplying the picture of the actual bahay kubo. Okay, and I'm pointing this out because I'd like to emphasize that sometimes there are just keywords, important words in the text, which are actually detrimental to the understanding of the whole text. So chances are, again, the learner is good in the discipline that you are teaching. The learner has comprehension. It's just that some words, some ideas are not in their context. So our role as the MKO is to always assume that, and to always believe that if we just connect their context, we just make some ideas be in their context, they can actually perform better, okay, in understanding reading materials. Okay, so they already pointed out the words. They were able to figure out the meaning of the words through context clues or through looking up the dictionary. They did that. Now we're ready for the questions. And remember, applying the QAR, we should be giving different types of questions. Okay, the first two right there in Think and Search, we are expecting convergent answers, but for the next two, we are expecting divergent answers. So, what questions can be asked? This is one example. What can be used in moving bahay kubo? Is it right there? Is it really right there? Yes, in this sentence, the traditional Filipino house, the bahay kubo, can be moved using wooden poles which are carried from the old place to the new one. So see, it is there. You're using wooden poles to carry the bahay kubo. Okay, they can point that out. Next, what is the effect of bayanihan? Okay, so they need to think and search. They need to read the entire text before they figure out what is really the effect of that, of this practice, of this wonderful trait. Okay. Author and me question, what does the text imply about good Filipino traits? Okay, so it's not directly written there that it's in the text, it's not directly mentioned there that we're talking about good Filipino traits, but it's implied. So the learner, given his or her schema, can create an idea by connecting those. Okay, next, on my own, we formulate this type of question. In your opinion, how can you apply community spirit in your daily life? And again, for each learner, you can expect different appropriate answers, different beautiful answers. Okay? So that's it. Then you give other activities that are appropriate, as mentioned in the previous discussion. Give them graphic organizers, give them comprehension strategies, or other things that are appropriate for your discipline. You know it. You know the specific strategies that are applicable in the subject areas that you are teaching. Okay. So that's it. Those are the 7 principles of constructivism, constructivist principles that we can apply whenever we write, whenever we design our supplementary reading materials. Okay, these are my references. Once again, let me tell you that after learning something worthwhile from this sharing that I have, share it, pass it on, okay? Create a multiplier effect. And then there may be many things that I've mentioned, but I know you will only select what's relevant for your context and eventually apply it and reflect whether or not it really works for your context. Thank you so much. I think we will proceed now to the Q&A portion.
Thank you very much, Sir Kevin, for that very insightful session that we have this afternoon. Let me just read some of the questions here from our viewers. So we have here a question from Miss M. Galano. So the
Mhm.
question, sir, is can you suggest other strategies in teaching other than the constructivist approach? Thank you.
Sorry, ma'am. Come again.
Sir, do you have any other suggested approaches for teaching other than the constructivist approach?
Okay. As I've mentioned a while ago, well, mainly K to 12, one of the key features of K to 12 is constructivism. So we adhere to that, and we see, we know, we actually observe the appropriateness of constructivism. But then one that I can name is the multiliteracies approach. Okay. In this approach, it recognizes the 21st century notion of literacy, wherein it actually accounts for the multimodal texts available, because we know now in the 21st century the texts are not just in print, but they're also in visual media. They are in multimedia and varied forms. So in multiliteracies there is multimodality. Also, it recognizes the multilingual possible background of the child. Also, it accommodates the multiple cultures that are wherein the learners are exposed to. So I would say multiliteracy's approach. It's very timely for the 21st century.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. We have here our next question from Miss Angelica Elashon. What approach could be used with students in special education?
That's really challenging. But then actually I have little knowledge. I admit I have little knowledge about special education. I salute the SPED teachers. You're really doing an incredible job. However, I would say that I can think of other things, but I would just reiterate some context of some concepts of constructivism. Okay, um, these special learners that we have really need ample scaffolding. Okay, if our regular learners, if our regular learners need scaffolding, all the more our sped learners. Okay, and uh, again, there are many possible MKOs or more knowledgeable others for these learners. Thank you, Miss Kiana.
Okay, sir, and our last question for this
Okay.
afternoon is from Mr. Maverick Reyes.
Mm-hmm.
The question, sir, is do you have any suggestion for tech voc and art strand approach in teaching?
Tech Voc. Again, I am a I teach UM subjects in senior high school. So this may not be appropriate, but again, I would like you to explore the multiliteracies pedagogy, because aside from the multimodality, the multicultural, and the multilingual background or considerations of for the children or for the learners, it also that approach also recognizes that the new technologies that are emerging. Yeah, thank you.
Okay po, sir. Then, habol po, sir. Last question po.
Apa.
Opo, the question, sir, is constructivist approach applicable for visual arts students and as a visual arts teacher?
Yes, by all means. The prompts that we can give for our visual learners, for our visual arts learners, will be models. Okay, so we give them many models, many visual models that would serve as the scaffolding. Okay, the ideal output, should we say, for that realm of learning.
Okay po, Sir Kevin. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Miss
That's all the
Kiana.
questions we have this afternoon. For the other questions left unanswered, we'll try to respond through the comment section. And then, sir, before we end the session, do you have any final reminders to our viewers?
Yeah, yun lang po. Paulit-ulit ko lang sasabihin na more than ever, we should really realize that we are all MKOs and we're all in this together. This is not just the job of the teachers. The MKOs, as I've mentioned a while ago, are also the parents, the guardians, and other more intellectually and skillfully mature individuals. And of course, we're in the new normal setup. Let's help one another to really scaffold for our learners and for their learning.
Okay po. Thank you very much, Sir Kevin. In behalf of Vibal Group Incorporated, I would like to thank you for spending your afternoon as our resource speaker on the topic and on our webinar Supplemental Materials webinar series. Thank you very much, Sir Kevin.
And of course, to all our viewers this afternoon, to all our Kavibal viewers, thank you very much and we hope to see you next week for all the other webinars we will be having. Muli po, magandang araw sa ating lahat at maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much. God bless us all.